All right, guys, welcome back to the Thousand Card Project. I'm joined by Connor Weinman. He's the creator of Cards and Canvas, and a really cool channel that blends art with the hobby. And a guy that I've followed. He's we share the Kansas City connection together. I grew up in Kansas City. That's where he lives now, and just really, I was really drawn to his videos, and reached out and probably thought I was a psycho, just kind of reaching out of the blue. But man, I'm fired up that you're on the show, man.
Hey, I appreciate it. This is the first time I've done anything like this, so hopefully it goes smoothly for you.
No doubt, there's no doubt. Cards and Canvas. That's a unique name. That's a unique a niche in the hobby. Talk a little bit about the origin of that.
All right, yeah. So I've always had an affinity for like drawing and art. I blame it on when I was a kid. I did the painting, and my mom was like, "Oh my gosh, that's so good," and hung it on the fridge, and that felt good. So I just kind of stuck with it. So I always had a knack for that. Always had an interest in it. And then it eventually got to the point where people were kind of interested in buying my work, which was awesome. Looking to pay off student loans, save up for a house, start a family, stuff like that. And around that same time that I hit that point in my art career, my buddy took me to a card show, my first card show, and I was looking around, saw these cards that were just 10K, 15K, 20K, and I was just like, "Oh my gosh, how do you get to that point?" And a guy was just like, "Oh, well, I buy and sell cards so I can afford cards like this." And I was just like, "Well, I'll never be able to take money out of my paychecks." I started flipping a little bit, and then just had that name pop in my head, Cards and Canvas. I just thought it'd be a cool place. The guys that like buying and selling cards probably have a man cave or a room where they have, art and stuff hung on the wall. So it kind of seemed like there was a little overlap in the audience, and I could give my unique perspective through that. And
Yeah,
it's been fun.
I think it's so cool. And I think that, there's been a handful. I recommended a YouTube series that Matt Strom runs
Mhm.
that he's had some artists on, and I just think it's really cool tying those two things together. And then my wife, if she hears me, she'll probably peek her head around the corner here, and she'll say that like I absolutely hate just hanging pictures on the wall that don't mean anything.
Mhm.
And so the idea of hanging something up that you created yourself, I think is awesome. But you obviously, we'll get into the card piece of this in a minute, but you made a conscious decision at some point here to kind of take this thing on YouTube and share it with the world, and talk a little bit about the vulnerability of that, and then just like the fallout of it, or the what you've received back from that.
Yeah. Let's see. So I've always kind of just the creative process is really fun, and putting videos together and stuff like that kind of has fallen into that. I've dabbled in the past with different things, just making short videos to be funny for my friends, or I got into animation a little bit when I was a teenager. So I had some of the basic skills, and I started watching these videos. You've probably seen like Harmozy, Gary Vee. Those guys started popping up on my feed more and more,
Yep.
and I started to kind of understand a little bit of the language they were talking about, which helped me kind of use the information that they give. And I can't remember the video or if somebody told me this, but it was just what an opportunity it is to be building a business, building a brand, and the opportunity to get paid for people to watch you advertising your business or brand, and build a community around that of like-minded individuals. Like, there's never been anything like that in history. And when it was explained to me like that, I was just like, oh, I'm all in now. I'm going. So it's been a bit of a slow burn. At first, the stuff you start putting out's not as good as you want it to be, or the standard that you hold you yourself, but that's just the learning process. So you kind of have to humble yourself, and just the only way out is through. Keep getting those reps in, and slowly but surely people have, you know, kind of leaned into it, started seeing the vision for what we're doing, and a lot of people come for the cards and the tips that I try to give to kind of help people make better decisions with that, and then they stick around for the art, which has kind of always been my goal, to introduce them to that through our kind of common, hobby in sports card collecting and selling.
Yeah, I think it's really cool. It's how I stumbled across you. Obviously, there's a good saying in the entrepreneurial world that, like, if you're not embarrassed by your first video, podcast, piece of art, whatever, then you waited too long.
Yeah.
Having written books and done TV shows and podcasts and those types of things, I know that to be 100% true. Like rep 10 is better than rep 1, rep 100 is better than rep 10, and so on and so forth. And
Hmm.
I've seen it grow and get better. I thought it was great from the very beginning, but I also have seen it continue to evolve, and you put resources into it and those types of things, which is really cool to see as well. But
Appreciate
at
it.
what point, what video, what stage of this did you kind of realize, hey man, maybe I'm onto something here?
When I had a video where I just kind of showed the collection that I had built. I think it's called How I Next My Sports Card Collection or something like that. Some YouTube title like that. And I just kind of went through like, hey, I started this with $500 and through flipping, through consistently making those base hits and building a collection, it's worth five figures now. And that was over the course of like a year and a half range. So that's significant for a part-time. You're having fun interacting with people that are into the same thing you're into. So showing that off and just saying the things I did, I think that was my first video to get over 1,000 views, and a lot of people engaged and commented and supported what I did. And had tried filming like some B-roll and transition shots and stuff just to keep the video entertaining and engaging. And people responded really well. So I was like, oh, cool. I can kind of do I think I executed for the first time what my vision was for what the channel would be, and people responded really well. So that was a good feeling.
When you before we kind of dig into the card piece, just kind of honing in on the content creation part of this, like, is it what tools are you using? I mean, I saw you just recently got a GoPro or Osmo or something along those lines, right?
Yeah, this little guy.
And then what are you using to edit? And is there any other tools that you're using to kind of put this thing together?
Yeah, a guy just messaged me about this week, asking for some tips actually. So I got a good answer for you. I started with my iPhone and CapCut, and you can start with the free version. You just have the little watermark at the end, but
Right.
I started with that, editing it on there. And then once I started to get the traction, once I hit that 1,000 views, I was like, okay, I've learned the basics and I'm confident in that. Now I want to, you know, beef it up a little bit, have a little bit more real estate to work with, get it on the big screen, my computer monitor. So I continued to use my iPhone to record, but I paid for Premiere Pro. They were having a promotion where if you sign up for a year, I think it was like 30 or 40% off what it normally is. And I already pay for Photoshop. That's kind of how I mock up my paintings and stuff. So I just upgraded from the Photoshop only to the Creative Suite while it was on sale and learned how to use that. That was a bit of a learning curve again. And then upgraded once I started getting paid for YouTube. I was like, okay, let's double down. I hit that threshold that they have 1,000 subscribers and 4,000 watch hours.
Yeah.
And I was just like, okay, this is reality. The harder I lean into it, the more I'm getting out of it over the course of time. So let's get a little camera. And this one was cool because it'll detach and I can kind of, if you saw the video, like I'll plug it on my chest and then it has that point of view while I'm making deals at card shows, which is, I think, it's pretty unique, different perspective.
I thought that was great when you went to the card show and you had that. I think it's so cool, and I think like there's probably speaking to that a little bit. I think there's probably a little bit of a point that you have to get to where you just don't care that you're carrying around a camera on your chest and people are seeing it and all that. You know what? I guess that's probably it doesn't sound like you're. I mean, it sounds like you're a little bit of a performer in that way, the art part of it and all that, where it doesn't bother you as much. But for people that maybe that's a hurdle for, what would you recommend?
It definitely bothered me a lot. So some of it is just growing as a man and being like, why do I care so much about how people perceive me? Because I know who I am. Um, and I know that I'm trying to make something I would enjoy watching. So even when you're not there, you just kind of have to eat it. And that I think that embarrassment from being awkward at card shows or awkward on a video is kind of, you can turn that into like a fuel for you to be like, well, I never want to say that on camera again, or I don't like the way I worded that. So then the next time, that's one of those reps, the next time you come back around to that situation, you execute better and people respond better. And that just compounds rapidly. So it's really a matter of putting yourself out there and knowing it's going to be embarrassing And then after a certain point, you really realize that nobody cares at all. Because if they don't like your video, they don't stay past 5 seconds anyway.
Right.
So if they like your video, they stick around, they get to know you a little bit. And then if you say something awkward, it's kind of like, oh, well, I've liked it up to this, so I can forgive that. And then if they don't like it, they didn't stick around till minute 3 anyway. So what's the risk reward of doing it? It's much smaller and less intimidating than it feels like it is.
Yeah, those moments are what humanizes you as well. I mean, you're not a
Hmm.
robot. You're not a robot at that point, and so it's part of the endearing part of it. You mentioned something in there that I wrote down that I think is a good segue into getting into the cards, but like what you were doing, the time that you were investing, the resources that you ended up putting into the content creation side of it, those things compound. And so once you hit that 1,000 views or whatever, then it kind of unlocks the next stage. Talk a little bit about how that's happened in your collection and how and
Mm.
you don't make any bones about it. You're trying to make money with cards as well. You're trying to have a good collection as well. And I think that's most people. I think that's 99%
Yeah.
of the people out there. But how has what's your strategy kind of right now, and then how's that grown from start to current?
Yeah. There's definitely been tiers and growth since I've started. And I've thought about doing a video about this just because it's really interesting. Like, I think you have to go through these steps to get to the point where you're flipping downtowns. Like, I just got to the point where I'm flipping these case hits and feeling confident with my purchases. But I don't think I would have gotten here if I started here. Like, you have to do the dollar bin shuffling, picking out the cards that might be worth $3 or $4, and you're getting them for $1, and kind of nickel and diming your way up from there because you learn so much about the value of sets, the values of different players. Oh my gosh, why do Green Bay Packers cards sell for twice as much as another sought after, like the Patriots? You'd think that they have just as good fan bases, but they don't collect cards as much. Stuff like that. Let's see. Tearing up from that point, and it's kind of like a relief. It's so intense the amount of effort you have to put in sorting through hundreds of $1, $2 cards, trying to flip them for pennies. At least I think you have a similar kind of start where it's like, I don't want to take $10,000 on my paycheck or my savings. I'm trying to build this from, here's a small fund that I can use, and then we're going to build from there, baby, and let it grow. Um, the more wins you get at the smaller range, it's actually easier to sell cards in that $50 to $100 range than it is for you to sell a $15, $10, $5 card.
Yeah, I could agree more with all that. I think, I really do believe that there is stages that you have to go through in this thing, or you're going to fail along the way. Maybe you jump high, but you didn't know the basics, right? And then you get
Hmm.
somewhere down the line. Or maybe you start low and it just, $1 turns into $3 buys, it turns into $5 buys. I think I think those are important stages, and I also think ultimately where I'm trying to go with things with the 1,000 card project is I look at it like a stock portfolio, and that there's a certain percentage that I'm willing to go high risk, and there's a certain percentage that I'm going to go low risk, but those returns are, I mean, it's easy to 2x a $1 card. It's not easy to 2x $200 card, but you're right in that the sales part of that, it takes just as much effort to sell it as the low stuff. So how have you been able to do that? Because that's been something that's been hard for me, knowing what kind of return, if you look at it just from a percentage base, that you can get on those dollar cards versus some of the higher cards. How have you been able to make that shift? And then as well as just, like, I actually really, really enjoy going through those dollar bins and finding those kind of diamonds that people are just kind of discarding. There's a part of me that likes that as well. It's been hard to kind of level past.
Yeah. So I think we have a term for this when I was going through PT school. And it was kind of like, oh, this class is a weed out class. They're trying to get rid of the people that aren't really in it. Like we had pathophysiology where I had to look at cells underneath microscopes and say what kind of cancer and what type of cell this was. And I'm like, I'm a physical therapist. Why nobody, if we're in the hospital and they're trying to diagnose cancer cells and they go to the PT clinic and they're like, we need you to look at this, then people are in trouble. So just in the sense of like, it's such a difficult course, and there's so much that goes into learning that stuff for us not to use it later on. But it's weeding out the people that are in it for the right reasons versus the people that are just, you know, not as passionate about it. So I think that kind of applies to like the dollar bin stuff. Like if you don't like looking at sports cards that are $2 and you get excited about like, oh, I value this one differently than you value it, so I'm getting a deal on this, then you probably just don't like sports cards. So if you add a couple zeros to the back end of it, I still don't think, one, there's better ways to make a few $100 more efficiently, like the stock market. And two, you know, you're gonna have a hard time learning, you know, the difference between a Panini Prism and a Topps Chrome for football and why that they sell in such different, values.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think it's and I think people that are in this, they understand. I mean, I think there's, as an alternative asset. I mean, there's not very many alternative assets that you can make 35%, 25%. And you have to be confident in that. You have to develop the basics to be able to do that. I think, and that's where that starts. I think for almost everybody, you've been able to level up a little bit faster, definitely than me, and probably others as well. And I think it kind of fits again with just who you are as an artist, in that curating your collection, curating your inventory seems to be very intentional, seems to be very, strategic. And so, how do you go about deciding what players to pick up, and where are you sourcing those things from typically?
Well, before I was even into sports cards, I've always been a football and sports fan, and huge in fantasy football. I every year we're at the drafts with the laptops pulled up, and I've been reviewing these players that are coming into the league for 2 years now. And but I had been doing that. I just hadn't been relating it to sports cards. I've been relating it to my fantasy football leagues and stuff like that. So the information overlaps. So I'd kind of developed a bit of that mindset, and it's not one for one. It doesn't always translate the way you would want it to, but I would say it's more often than not it does, because people that are into sports cards probably are into fantasy football. So the hype signals are similar, and you kind of start to feel that pulse on where are people going to be looking in a month versus where they're looking now. So there is some strategy in that sense. I do think the best advice that I've had was just buy what you like, because you're probably not the only person that likes it. Not to make it sound too like objective and structured, because there's a lot of give and feel to it. But if you break down flipping, it's you're buying a card that you value more than the person you're buying it from, and you're finding the person that values that card more than you currently value it and selling it to them for a profit. And if you know how to, think of, oh, well, I guess if you break it down to football season's coming in 2 months, are more people going to be looking at football cards than they are now? Probably. So I should probably stock up on football cards. And then you can really leverage that to do some cool gains.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds super basic, but I think people, when they first get into it, they don't necessarily understand those selling markers, and
Hmm.
and anticipation, and those types of things. And I think relating it back into fantasy sports, and understanding sport in general. I think you're absolutely right. I mean, you're a physical therapist. I'm a coach. I mean, it's kind of in our DNA, to understand that. I think, but so you identify the player. You're like, I know you were a CJ Stroud 2 months ago,
Yeah.
was you were laser focused on, amongst others, obviously. But where are you going? I mean, obviously eBay is the end all catch all. But what are some of the outside the norm places that you're looking for cards?
Let's see. So, like where I purchase or players I'm looking at?
Where you purchase,
Okay.
source.
So I do a lot of eBay auctions, because if you kind of what I'm leaning into to sell of using consigners, they do so much volume that there are cards that kind of drop out of the cracks there. As we approach preseason, that's less and less true. So I don't view right now as a buying period for me. Like we kind of said earlier before we started, it's like I feel like I'm kind of sitting on my hands with the inventory because I'm waiting for the market to kind of move up, which we know it will. Patiently waiting on these cards that I could sell right now for a solid chunk, but I know I'll make, probably 25% more if I wait 3 weeks. So that's hard. So buying, it's just card shows where I'm making really confident buys like that downtown or really low numbered stuff that comps hold a little less true for because if there's a gold out of 10 that sold for 200 and that's the only one that's sold and I'm asking 220, it's hard to argue against that because you never know when the next one's going to come up for sale and I have the one that you're wanting right now. So
Right, right. Is there, so you mentioned, and you did a video on this I thought was really, really good about just, comps and,
mhm.
people negotiating those types of things. I mean, obviously, I think what I've kind of witnessed or learned mostly from you is just you're really comping based off, hey, you're okay paying full comps at this time where the card is valued at because you're playing the selling markers. You're looking, you're forecasting 2, 3 months ahead sometimes, and you know that you're going to gain your profit margin in that time horizon. But I think when you go to these shows, is there any sort of kind of just back napkin math or things like that? Do you just do you go 1.5 times the card to kind of anticipate what you might sell it at, or have a goal of what you
Mhm.
want to make and know that you're sticking to your numbers in some type of way?
Let's see. Let me think through that. Kind of. I don't think it's that intentional. I have gotten very okay with taking losses on cards. Maybe not very okay. I mean, it bums you out a little bit if you lose $20, but kind of like the content, it's the same. What's the risk and reward of this? I could risk $40 to make $20. And then if things don't go the way that I think they will, like sometimes there's an injury, or like Rasheed Rice was one where the car accident. Okay, now everything's down half the price that it was. You can't predict that,
Right.
but I still only lost 20% of the cards. So that rare outlier event that causes the cards I anticipate to go up actually go down. I'm still not broke. I can still get most of what I'm into a card for because I bought at good times. So yeah, I think just you do that enough times, you get confident in what you're buying, and then you get nailed here and there. But you know, I can't remember if we talked about this in one of our previous calls, but if you could, I don't like using gambling as like a analogy, but this one's pretty good. If you could go to a blackjack table and you put $100 down and 70% of the time that $100 turns into $200, and then the other 30% of the time it turns into $80. So the risk is you gain 100 versus lose 20. Well, you better play as many hands as they let you because your return over time is going to be
Right.
absolutely insane. So you get that confidence while you're at these shows, and you kind of get a feel for you know will this person work with me on price a little bit if I can show them some legitimate comps and just trying to get on the same page with guys rather than trying to trick them to bring their prices down with like, well, this one that looks like a toddler, like it looks like a toddler chewed on the corners. This one sold for $25, so I don't think I can meet you at 100. It's like, well, obviously that's not a reliable comp, you know?
Yeah, I think it's this tough deal because I'm the same way. Like I hate negotiating. I hate when vendors don't put their prices on their cards. Those types of things. Because I want to be the person that goes in and says, okay, this is what you value it at. This is what I'm willing to pay. Versus start having the conversation. Well, if you sold it on eBay, it'd be at 85%. So should I offer you 85%, or is it customary to go lower than that card show and we're doing bulk, those types of things. So I'm with you on that. I think the timing piece, identifying diamonds in the rough, those are kind of more the approach that I try to take as well. But now you've got the cards, right? Where are you selling these cards at? I mean, obviously, I know you just did a video where you're looking at a consigner and kind of experimenting there. And I agree with what you said earlier about kind of some of those losses and some of these things that you try are just tuition. You're paying to learn. But what's been the most rewarding, or where you've gotten the most return on your investment in terms of the sales process?
I do eBay. I think it's the best place to start and get comfortable with packaging and shipping out cards. I've done a few deals over my Instagram just as the audience has grown. You can package some ship cards up and, agree on a price pretty easily. I don't do deals off eBay that are very high value. I'd rather eat the fee and minimize the risk than some guy being like, I don't know, things come back on you when you don't go through these official sites. So I like playing it safe, especially because I think compared to a lot of these guys that are just flipping, I'm trying to build like an actual legitimate business through the art and the cards. I don't know what this looks like 5 years from now, but I don't want any like tax audit to come through and be like, whoa, you sold 20 grand of stuff off your Instagram that you didn't report, or I just don't want to open that door for cards and canvas because I'm hoping in a few years we're talking about this as like one of the bigger names in the hobby and as something that's unique and cool and legit and trusted. So I stick to the platforms. eBay's good. I've heard there's a few other ones popping up like Collects and ComC's getting big. I don't feel like I know enough about them to talk about them too much. I just feel comfortable with eBay, so that's what I use.
Yeah, I use both of them, and I agree with you. I mean, eBay is probably the gold standard. I think at the end of the day, just because of the number of eyes and all those types of things. But like, it just irks me when people are like Feebay and all these different things. And I'm like, dude, like if you went and bought set up a store, or you went to even set up at a card show, like there's fees associated with that. I mean, there's 15% right there. Like to have this many eyes and to be able to do this digitally to where you don't have any overhead, like you're crazy. That said, I think, obviously knowing the market and those types of things, are there any tools that you use to kind of know the market? Is there, a card ladder or market movers or anything like that? Is there anything that you found to be real effective?
I've looked at market movers. It can be useful if you are really investing into a single card heavily. If you're like, I'm gonna buy 50 CJ Stroud rookie Prism silvers, and you're playing that numbers game. I don't, because I don't run across 50 silvers of the same player. With the shows and the auctions, my inventory is very diverse. I use 130 point because I used to use eBay to comp my cards and just go to the last sold of the exact card, and because I knew that's the place I was going to sell. You know, let's see what this is selling for on the place where I sell cards, and then I can sell it there for that price. You would think anyway. But you look at 130 point, eBay changed the best offers to where the last sold sometimes won't. It used to be X'd out and it show what it actually sold for. They did an update a few months ago where it doesn't actually show that it sold for a best offer.
Yeah, I know.
130 point shows you exactly what it sold for and that it did in fact sell for a best offer. So that's how I think that burned a lot of people. And I definitely got smoked on that one, but
Yeah,
that's how I've been using 130 point at card shows. And
yeah. I think it's I've used 130 point. I've used market movers. I've used card ladder. I actually stick with market movers. I like market movers. I think all those platforms now kind of show the true sales,
Mhm.
but they're varying levels of how fast they are. I think is kind of the issue of showing those now. But no, it's a great tool. I think 130 point should be on your. I think especially when you're selling cards, you should be cross checking anyways, and just making sure you're
Mhm.
kind of getting back, circling back with just the business, the goals of the business. Obviously you want this to be as much art as cards, in the future. Where do you see? I mean, are you going to get to a point where you've got on your website or in your eBay store original art that people can purchase or commission from you, that type of thing?
Hopefully. Yeah, absolutely commissions. I take commissions over on my Instagram right now for the most part. The art, I think, is a huge slow burn for the business. One, because there's just a certain amount of people that can afford and want art for their man cave or, it's the things that I offer. Um, the good thing about art that has leverage over sports cards long term is one, there's no ceiling for what I can sell a painting for in an original work, and then I can sell reproductions of the artwork once my audience has grown. Sorry, something popped up. Once my audience reaches a certain point and people are really interested in the art, hopefully in the next year or two, I can sell the print of the artwork 1,000 times if I would like to. So once the work's done and I put it in and it's up on my website, I can sell reproductions of that work and it's already done. And then, every time you sell a sports card, you have to sell another sports card and then to sell the next sports card and then sell the next sports card. So you're doing a new sale every single time. The paintings, you do the work up front and then they kind of sit there and hopefully your audience comes to enjoy it and wants to buy a reproduction of it.
Yeah, like I said, I think it's awesome. I mean, for those that are interested in commissions and those types of things, like, do you have any kind of a tiered pricing that to kind of give people an idea?
For the art specifically, right?
Yeah.
I look at what some of my competitors are doing for sure. I'm not a huge fan of just saying, well, this is worth $5,000. Hopefully somebody buys it. I'm definitely a fan of valuing it at what people would value it at. There was you guys might be familiar, he's kind of in the trading card space now. Um, Spectre Sports Art. He's in Philadelphia. And when I was first starting out, I messaged him on Instagram. I was like, hey, man, would love to get some tips. I'm starting out. I'm trying to build something similar to you. It's pretty funny. He gave me some really good tips in that first meeting. And when I first met him, I was like, well, give me a rundown. How'd you start this? He said, well, this started in PT school. And I'm a physical therapist, so that was really cool. He gave me some great insight on how to price my stuff, where to sell it, but really for the most part it's worth what people are willing to pay for it.
Right.
So this is not official, but I've been considering putting the Jaden Daniels up on eBay starting at 99 cents for a 10-day auction and just seeing, doing some content around it saying, hey, this is day one of me listing my art for 99 cents. I hope somebody would value it for more than 99 cents, and I didn't just put all those hours into it for that. It'd be an interesting experiment to see what my current audience values that at.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, if nothing else, for the content would be pretty cool.
Yeah.
Maybe not the full length big one, maybe something smaller.
Yeah.
No, that's all. Well, I got one more question to ask about that. Then I want to get you out because I know you got to get moving.
Appreciate it.
This is one concept that I've really thought, when you look at all the money coming into sports cards now, with whether it be the president of the Washington Commanders buying that card or Dick's Sporting Goods or whoever, right? I really think that people are looking at things with an art lens, that this is a piece of art and that there's tax implications to that. There's strategies as high net worth individuals to kind of, put value into art in a kind of a unique way. You got any kind of thoughts on that as you've kind of seen that out there?
Yeah, I look at it as a similar kind of revolution in how consumers view artificial things. If you look back at furniture from the 70s, everything's plastic and shiny and rubbery because it was new. And then you fast forward to today, and we're all tired of everything being plastic and shiny. We want the handmade wooden table, with some craftsmanship. I don't want this made in a factory. But it was really cool when factories were new and they could do that with the molds and stuff. I view, these tangible, I want to hold something I just spent $200 on. I didn't spend $200 on this one. It's not worth that much. I want to hold that. I want to collect that, feel it, smell it, all those senses. That's really appealing in a day where everybody is tired of just looking at a screen and, buying just stuff. Like, I want the thing that I can see and hang on my wall and it's a conversation piece compared to, I don't know, buying some mass printed AI generated piece of art to hang behind my couch. I don't know.
Yeah.
If that's not a one for one example, but I just think people want the tangible thing.
Yeah, I agree. I'm curious, and just maybe it's talking to an accountant or something along those lines at some point, but just how people can use that in the same way that people have used art, to spread out their net worth. I think that it'd be interesting to explore.
Yeah.
At some point, but all right, man, we do some quick questions here at the end. So just really quick here, PC card you'll never sell.
Ooh, let's see. This one was cool. I just because I'm into it for so cheap. I got a Patrick Mahomes rookie. It's a Prism silver. I'm into it for like $70, and it was like the first Prism Mahomes rookie year that I ever had. And it was just kind of a key point as I was growing the channel, right as I was hitting about 1,000 subscribers. So I'll probably never sell that one. That's such a cool card.
Favorite card show or card event you've attended?
I go the local one, that's the biggest. I'm starting to branch out, hoping to do National and Fanatics next year, but it's local. It's in Lee Summit, right outside of Kansas City. John Knox Card Show. It's once every quarter. There's always great stuff there.
What's one Grail card that you want in your collection?
I mean, I'm a Chiefs guy. I'm from Kansas. I live in Kansas City. So Mahomes rookie auto, like a gold, silver prism, anything like that it'd be hard for me to justify buying one of those though, but you never know.
What's a favorite YouTube channel, a hobby-related YouTube channel that you watch?
I really like Trike Sports Cards.
Yeah,
I don't feel like he gets enough love in the hobby. He has similar content. He does more vlog style, really good educational stuff, good entertaining videos. I like his stuff a lot.
and he's a former athlete, so that kind of fits
Yeah.
into our world as well. I like him a lot as well. What's one athlete that you want to do a collab with for art?
I've been blessed. I've been able to do some stuff for Patrick Mahomes. I got to do some stuff for Bobby Witt. Let's see. I mean, Patrick's kind of the face of the sport right now. So anytime I could get to work with him, that's great for the business. I like CJ Stroud. I think he's a cool guy. I think what you see is what you get with him. So it'd be great to get to work with him someday as well.
All right, last question here in the quick questions is if you had to start your card journey over again with 100 cards worth $1, how would you go about building this project that I've got going? What would be the first couple things you would do?
I would really look at those selling points in the market and what sets people are willing to pay more than $2 for base cards, like Prism or National Treasures. But those cards that you can find, in the dollar boxes, just to get that first, double up across the board. And then from there it's cake.
Let me expand on that. What would you do if you went past the dollar box? What would be the first kind of like? Are you buying graded? Are you buying raw to grade? Are you looking for a specific subset of players?
If I was thinking, so if my goal was to flip up to that, like, I think the hardest part would be getting all those cards to like the $20-$50 range. I don't think grading in that value would be the right move. One, because it's super slow and backlogged right now. And two, if you grade a card and it gets a 10 and it's normally a $5 card, it's not going to be worth much in a 10 above what the grading fee was anyway. I think that would be a good move once you get over that $20-$50 range. I would say the most efficient route would probably be find people that grade cards, so you know that they're into it for 20% of what it's worth. You find that gem. Maybe they're willing to work more just to get into more inventory, so you can get them below comps. You can turn that $20 into $40 a lot easier because that person had, the least amount possible into a card that's worth $100.
Yeah.
Something like that. It's hard to find those windows, but they're out there.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, I think that's great. I think setting up at shows and not even as a vendor, but just to buy, I think you're going to get a lot of those opportunities come your way.
Mm-hmm.
Well, good, man. Well, where can people stay up with you and, any kind of, upcoming videos or announcements or anything along those lines?
Yeah. I'm at Cards and Canvas on Instagram, Cards and Canvas on YouTube, eBay, all that stuff. I try to do weekly videos. It doesn't always work out like that because this is kind of my part-time side gig. Trying to do one painting a month, and then I'm just enjoying the journey. I'm just documenting the process as I grow, trying to build something cool that everybody enjoys, and I'm always looking to learn. So if you guys ever, want to reach out, I'm willing to give tips and pointers. I just like meeting the people with similar interests as me. And if anybody they watch my stuff and they have any pointers, I'm always trying to learn and get better because I take this pretty seriously, like I think you do, and I'm just trying to do something cool, building Cards and Canvas.
Well, you're definitely doing that, man. Like I said, I reached out just because I thought it was a really cool concept, and then to get you on the show here is awesome. And I watch every video, so appreciate you, man.
Hey, I appreciate it.